Welcome back. Today we're reading Chapter 4. Voice of Terror. Invisible Scarlet O'Neil, still shaken by her dreams, which turned out to be predictions, decided to get her mind off of her own troubles by attempting to solve those of Charles Dew, the architect. The last time she had seen him, he'd been talking with Mr. Strike, the man known throughout the city as the King of Slums. "What did Mr. Strike have to say when you talked to him, Charles?" Scarlet asked when she saw him again. "Scarlet, I don't know what to think," Charles said. "I didn't get much out of him. He simply said that he showed the city officials around, and they agreed the property was structurally sound and adequate, and there was no need for a new housing project." "I did a little sightseeing on my own, and you're perfectly right when you say those buildings are nothing but tumble-down shacks," Scarlet remarked. She refrained from telling him the details of her tour of the district when she invisibly investigated the tenements. Charlie steered his roadster toward his offices. He was downcast over the collapse of his plans and grateful to Scarlet for taking an interest in his efforts. Scarlet was more than interested in cheering him. She vowed to use her strange powers to help the hundreds of persons who would be affected by a cleanup of the ramshackle area where so many lives were endangered. "Come in this next office, Scarlet. I'd like to show you the model of my project," Charlie invited, as Scarlet absently hung up her hat and coat. She was thinking of the dilapidated houses she had seen in Strike's kingdom. A shudder ran through her when she remembered the narrow escape the baby had had when the chandelier fell. She thought of the loose boards, the broken steps, shaky railings, cracked walls, and caved-in roofs of the dwellings reported to be structurally sound. "Look here. This is what I dreamed the section of the city would look like in a year or so," Charlie explained. He turned on lights above a panoramic view of the office wall, and the scene drew a gasp of admiration from Scarlet as she gazed at it. She saw a dream city of well-lighted, airy, modern buildings, which still retained a home-like atmosphere about them. There were sundecks and curved windows of glass, brick, spacious lawns, trees, and wide driveways. The dwellings, designed to be sturdy and compact, were a direct contrast to the tumble-down flats which the city officials found adequate. "Oh, Charles, it's wonderful," Scarlet O'Neil exclaimed. The plans filled her mind the rest of the day, and she hoped she would have a good night's rest so she could tackle the problem with zest the following morning. But when bedtime came, she said to herself,
I'm almost afraid to fall asleep. Each night I dream something terrible, and my dreams always come true. It's unbelievable.
She yawned and murmured,
A person can't get along without any sleep, and I always did need at least 8 hours. And I hope I get them tonight.
At 5 the next morning, Scarlet awakened startled from the ghastly realism of her night's dream. My dream was rather hazy in spots, but I remember a newsreel commentator on the screen telling about my being murdered, she thought. It was at the Paris Theater, and they were showing One Love. She picked up a newspaper and found to her amazement that One Love was the Paris Theater attraction. I also remember a girl in my dream, a Miss Daphne Dell. She was living at 701 North Tea Grove Avenue. She was in trouble, and I was trying to help her, Scarlet recalled. She decided this dream could not come true, but at the same time, she was curious to see if anyone by the name was living at the address on Tea Grove Avenue. When she reached the apartment building, she stood outside for a moment, hoping she would not find a Daphne Dell inside.
Heaven help me if she is here. It will mean my dream is coming true, and there will be announcing my obituary in the newsreel at Paris Theater, she thought.
Scarlet looked at the names in the apartment house lobby.
Her name isn't on the mailbox, but maybe she lives with someone,
she thought. She was glad she had made herself invisible, for a man in riding togs entered the hallway and pressed a button. She decided to follow him. He led her to the second floor, where a door was opened by a bleached blonde, wearing a feather-trimmed negligee. A nervous smile on her heavily made-up face betrayed her uneasiness as she saw her visitor.
Gee, it's nifty. Golly, I forgot we was going riding this morning,
she said.
Aren't you ready yet, Dimples?
The man barked roughly. He pushed his way into the apartment. An attractive brunette girl faced him with clenched fists and an angry expression on her already scarlet face.
I'm afraid I've detained her, she said.
Scarlet O'Neil, who had quietly and invisibly followed Nifty into the apartment, gasped when he said, in a startled voice,
Daphne Dell.
He grasped the girl by the shoulders and jerked her toward him, saying in a husky voice,
You're even more beautiful than ever, baby. Golly, how I've missed you. Take your paws off of me, Nifty. You framed me.
The girl replied in a shrill voice,
You murdered that wealthy old man out on the lake and made it look like I accidentally killed him. I got 5 years for that, and you got off free. Not so loud, baby, not so loud. You wouldn't want the whole neighborhood to know about it, now would you?
Nifty shoved her back toward the wall as he talked. Then he took his riding whip and held it across her neck, pinning her to the wall, and she said in a small, choked voice,
"Stop! You're choking me!"
Scarlet thought quickly.
Daphne is in trouble. She's mixed up with some shady characters. This Nifty is certainly a cold-blooded hoodlum, if there ever was one.
Dimples yelled.
"Hey, gee, wait a minute. This is my apartment, and I don't want any murder here."
She intervened just in time to stop Nifty from really hurting Daphne Dell.
That'll teach her to keep her mouth shut. What's she doing here anyway?
Nifty rasped as Dimples led the gasping girl to a chair.
"The poor kid ain't got any place to go. I told her she could stay with me till she finds a job,"
Dimples replied.
"If we're going riding, let's go."
Nifty snapped, turning attention away from Daphne.
"Okay, I'll be ready in a jiffy. Try to get along with each other while I'm dressing."
Dimples said sweetly. As soon as Dimples had left the room, Nifty moved toward Daphne and said in a silky voice,
"Let's be friends, Daphne. We used to be sweethearts. You know, I still could care for you in a big way."
Daphne held her arm across her bruised throat and stared stonily at him and said nothing. Scarlet stood directly behind her, watching everything that went on. Dimples soon appeared, dressed for riding, and she and Nifty left. Scarlet stayed behind, only long enough to hear Daphne mutter,
"He's a rat, but I'll get even. I'll play up to him. And then..."
Then Scarlet followed Dimples and Nifty. She remained invisible and listened closely to their conversation. She felt sure they were planning some sinister deed.
"Daphne knows too much, Dimples. The cops are just itching to get something on me. If she should start talking..."
Nifty began.
She wouldn't. Nifty," Dimples cut in.
"I'm not taking that chance. She's gotta go. And I know just the place to do it. The Paris Theater," Nifty said. Scarlet gulped, remembering that she dreamed it was Paris Theater, where the newsreel commentator had said she was killed. Scarlet continued to trail Nifty and Dimples and listen to the details of their plan. "All you have to do is get her to the theater, Dimples." "But Nifty," protested Dimples. "You'll do as I say," Nifty said, an edge of warning in his voice. "Tell her you feel like seeing a show this afternoon. Sit in the first row, and I'll be backstage." "Honey, if I didn't love you so much, I wouldn't do it. Gee," Dimples said. She was plainly frightened. Scarlet followed her until she left Nifty and went back to the apartment. She heard Dimples invite Daphne to a matinee.
Nifty's in for a surprise.
Scarlet thought.
I'm going to be backstage and prevent him from committing this murder.
She flew out the door just ahead of Dimples and Daphne and failed to see Dimples stoop to pick up a card. "Gee, what's this?" An identification card. It says, "Miss Scarlet O'Neil." Never heard of her. "She must have been in the building and lost it," Dimples said. Daphne told her to hurry, and as they entered the theater, Dimples urged Daphne to sit in the front row. Meanwhile, backstage, invisible Scarlet O'Neil rushed toward Nifty. With gun cocked, he was waiting for the gunplay in the film to cover up the sound of the pistol. Invisible Scarlet stumbled in the darkness and fell. Before she could pick herself up and reach him, Nifty fired at his human target. In the first row, Daphne was sobbing.
Dimples. Dimples. What's wrong?
Dimples held her hand over her heart and gasped.
I'm shot. The double-crosser, he...
She slipped to the floor. Scarlet, backstage, picked up a heavy piece of wood and crept up behind Nifty. As he muttered,
She had 10 times more on me than Daphne. I wanted to get rid of her anyway. Now I better scram.
Not so fast.
Scarlet whispered. She hit him over the head with the board.
The police will be wanting you, and it's no use making them look all over town. I'll call them.
Daphne, meanwhile, slipped out of the theater, knowing that there was a possibility that she might be sent back to prison if they found her mixed up with another murder. Later, at the district attorney's office, the identification card Dimples had picked up was turned in by a detective. Thus, it happened that Scarlet O'Neil was the name used in the announcement of the fatal shooting. Scarlet gulped and remembered how the newscast had been predicted in her dream. She hurried to the district attorney's office to correct the mistake. She informed them that a picture of the Paris theater had been shown on the screen, describing it as the scene of a murder in which blonde Miss Scarlet O'Neil was fatally wounded.
There's some mistake. I'm Scarlet O'Neil. I'm not blonde, and I'm very much alive,
she said. The district attorney nodded.
We're sorry about the newscast, Miss O'Neil. It got out before we discovered the girl was Dimples Dolly,
he explained.
I lost my identification card. She must have found it and put it in her purse,
Scarlet said, and the district attorney agreed. As Scarlet left him, she happened to notice a man entering a building across the street. It was Mr. Strike,
the king of slums. And now, it's about time I did something about you and Charlie Dew's housing project,
Scarlet said grimly. Thank you for watching. We'll see you next time when we read Chapter 5.
Invisible Sleuth.